but I will call this meeting to order. Present here so far. Well, actually, let's start with what is your favorite Dolly Parton song? That's our community icebreaker for the month. Does anyone have any they want to share? I'm not kidding. I'm going to go ahead and say, I actually don't know the name of it fully, but the one about In My Tennessee Mountain Home, that's what it's called. It's really beautiful, tells a great story. And I've been singing it for the last 2 days.
I'll go with a classic. I think 9 to 5 is a banger. It's a good one.
And has a great message.
Yeah. Any
others? No? Well, the whole point of this is for all of us to talk together. So think about the icebreaker next time or when we have a break. How do I advance the slides?
We have to. They're on. I think just you can move. Just do it. We'll put the slides up. Sorry, Marilia, who normally takes care of all this for us, is out. So we're gonna improvise with our slides for just a minute.
Great. So today, the main, I think if we just advance that, or no, that's not the one that's broadcasting. I don't know which one's broadcasting. Anyway, today the main issue that we're going to be discussing is the CCPSA search for the next CPD superintendent and get your comments and feedback on what you'd like to see in the next leader of CPD. We're putting on the resolution at the end, right? Yeah. Okay. We are going to have a resolution that is related to the CPD superintendent search that we've discussed in emails that we've sent out, but we will save that to a later stage of this meeting. Every week, we also like to have folks, before we get started in earnest, if you're part of a community group that has an event coming up or is asking for members, a community group here in the 19th district, if you would like to let us know what that event is and what group you're part of, this is a great opportunity to do that. So wanted to ask, does anyone here belong to a community group or have a community event coming up in the next month or so? Thank you, Sid. Mentioned at Temple Sholem, we have the High Holy Days coming up, which is true. We've got Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in the next few weeks. Yes. Would you like to?
Thanks. I'm Becca. I'm with the North Center Neighbors Association. One thing we have coming up is on September 12th at the North Center Farmers Market, we're going to be collecting, doing a supply drive for the 19th District Mutual Aid. So collecting clothes, shoes, stuff like that.
Can you describe it?
Yes, they support mostly to refugee families in the district, and so they collect supplies out of a local church and they redistribute them to neighbors.
For that work. And 19th District Mutual Aid, for those who don't know, was created in the wake of Greg Abbott from Texas sending migrants to Chicago. They first were housed at the police station, at the 19th District Police Station, and at police stations all across Chicago. And a group of community neighbors just came together to provide whatever support was needed, and that organization has continued to this day, and it's really inspiring work. And we were able to volunteer with 19th District Mutual Aid for our December meeting last year, so thank you for that work. I also want to recognize that we've been joined by Lieutenant Losi from the 19th District. Thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate it. Any other announcements folks want to make?
And just as a reminder, the reason we do this is because we know that part of having safe communities is getting together and being with our communities and being out and active neighbors. So thank you to North Center Neighbors for all the work that you guys do in our community. Thank you to the temples and the religious institutions, Pastor Jeremy, for having us and welcoming community and gathering community, because that is a really important piece of safe community.
Great, and just to repeat that for folks who happen to be listening to this recording or online, Advocacy committee meetings with Temple Shalom are on Tuesdays, you say? Next Tuesday of September, it'll be happening online, and you can ask Sid for information, or you can ask us, and we can pass it on. Thank you. Can I relinquish the chairmanship back to our chair?
Give the next slide.
Now, public safety trends and concerns. So one of the purposes of district councils is to report or gather information on public safety trends or concerns that folks have in our district. And we gather that information every month, and we give that information to the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability, or CCPSA. The CCPSA is a 7-member body that is selecting the nominees for next CPD superintendent, and they have other oversight authorities over CPD and the police accountability agencies, and them having a clear idea of what the trends and concerns are throughout the city is important for them to make good policy and make good decisions, and this is part of that process. So I wanted to invite anyone who had a friend or concern that they wanted to share to do so here, and we will take it down and make sure that's shared with the CCPSA. Anyone? Great, we're very unconcerned. This is good. Yes, sir.
I live on Sheridan.
Would you mind if we gave you this mic?
My name is Michael. So I live on Sheridan next to Hollywood Boulevard, and there's a lot of like super late night. I wouldn't call it drag racing, but extraordinarily loud vehicles. Which, I mean, I'm not, I don't care if your motor's loud on accident on purpose, but it's like intentional. Mm-hmm. And it's pretty frequent. Like, I would say, honestly, every night of the week. Just concerned. If that's like something, there could be, I don't know, some camera or something. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So really Sheridan next to Hollywood?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got Sheridan and Ardmore, basically.
Sheridan and
Ardmore.
Okay.
So we can keep that probably out there.
That one works?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Sam, do you want to take that over?
Yes.
All right. Apologies, everyone, for being late. I was on the phone with Deputy Mayor Andre, which I can give you an update a little bit later. But just, to give everyone just a sense of where the data is turning out to be in terms of just crime in the district. So year to date, through mid-August, motor vehicle thefts are up about 25%, while robberies decreased by 43%, and burglaries fell by 46% across the district. One of the things that we have heard about is high-profile traffic safety concerns along Western Avenue and Irving Park Road by community calls for enhanced corridor enforcement, because we know that there was a pedestrian and e-scooter crash, one actually fatal. So wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that, and that we are keeping an eye on that and working with our holders accordingly.
One other thing, just to quickly note, is there was a big trend of airbag thefts, and I'm pretty sure those have like dropped to zero. Is that, or next, very, very few, right? Okay, so that's great news.
I just want to comment on that second bullet point. I'm glad that you brought that up. And I just wanted to say that we saw some high profile traffic safety concerns. I'm a part of a group called Lakeview Urbanists. We saw concerns about, there was a crash, a fatal crash on Addison Inner Lakeshore Drive, and we worked with the 46th Ward and the 44th Ward to do a traffic study with CDOT and add pedestrian safety improvements along that corridor. And they're actually going to be installing that later this year. So I'd encourage something similar on Irving Park Road and Western Ave. I know at least Irving Park Road, I'm pretty sure, is a state road, so I know that complicates things, but definitely would encourage not just enforcement. I would love to see like some actual physical infrastructure put in place, because we know that design will slow cars down.
Can you repeat the name of your group that you said?
Lakeview Urbanists.
Okay, thank you.
The CCPSA update this month is really the topic of our whole meeting, which is that they've begun the search for CPD's next superintendent, and we'll be getting into more details in a few minutes about how that process is working and how you can have some input.
Well, this is very outdated at this point because our update from our parking alternative response team was going to be that we haven't received an update. But just for those of you who are unfamiliar with our parking alternative response team initiative, we have pitched to the city to transfer 911 calls that come in related to parking violations. So you think about blocked bike lanes or like blocked fire hydrants, and then instead of 911 routing those to CPD, actually route them instead to the Department of Finance, because the Department of Finance actually addresses parking violations today. They just don't do it through the 911 system. And one of the things that we heard back from the mayor's office and the departments back on May 25th is that they were going to only entertain an initiative that only included low-level parking violations, so city permits that are expired and not necessarily traffic hazards. We pushed back. We said this is not acceptable in our opinion. We want to make sure that these traffic violations and these traffic hazards are addressed because we want the safety of our residents to be first and foremost. So that is when Deputy Mayor Andre, he's the Deputy Mayor of Community Safety, he actually got involved after we met with him at a quarterly CCPSA meeting. We're very appreciative of his involvement, his engagement. He has been providing periodic updates, but one of the things that we asked for was a written response to our proposal to understand where the city and these departments officially stand. He's been working on that since our last meeting, which was centered on this topic. Funny enough, I did get a phone call from him about 24 minutes ago at this point, to provide me with an update. The update is that a more substantial update is coming next week, but he's been getting more data, working to understand how we can move some of those parking violation ones that are traffic hazards into this pilot program so that it does address Department of Finance, city budgeting, understand how effective this can be without necessarily requiring too much financial capital.
Clinician alongside an EMT worker. The latest updates, so recently CARE went citywide, but there was still a lot of struggles with implementation of the program. We are still seeing some struggles, but we are seeing progress towards those struggles. This chart right here, I FOIA'd information for how many calls they were actually going out to. And you can see it, not a ton, especially for being a citywide program, but it has gone up in this past month when it did go citywide in July. We are now at 17 dispatches from OMC. So OMC is the 911 call center. Ideally, just like CPD gets almost all of their calls directly from the 911 call center, ideally CARE will get to that point too, but there's other ways that we can really go about getting them calls in the meantime, and a lot of cities who are working towards building alternative response have to use these other modalities until it becomes part of the requesting a caravan. So if they go out to a call and they see that there is a need for a caravan, they'll be able to make that call to OMC, who can then direct the caravan to them. Some good information about that is CPD is working with CARE to try and get that information out to as many officers as they can. I think there might have been communication that went out via email. And then they're also committed to doing roll calls, so having care members go to roll calls in the different districts and introduce themselves, kind of share how they work and how they can a way for officers to meet the care workers so they know who they'll be working with in the field, which is important. So hopefully with that, we'll see an increase in the number of CPD requests that are happening for care. Another important way that, as you can see from months past, like the top part of the month, self-dispatch. So when CARE was able to listen in on CPD radio and then initiate themselves their own response, they were able to get a significant larger number of responses. And that's because they knew what to listen for. They knew what were the right type of calls for them to respond to. They were around, you can see where the numbers dropped off. They were no longer allowed to be part of CPD radio. So they then no longer were getting calls via that mode. They are working on trying to reinstate some access to care so that they can try and work towards that. That is one of the things that I try to categorize the different like where we're at in different categories. That is something that we need to continue working on and making sure that we're able to get them to be able to be on the police radio and access just the parts that they need to be able to access in order to go on and respond to the calls. Another reason we were told for the low volume of calls is I guess there's a lot of operational issues with the vans, and when a van goes out, they are a lower priority than police vans and fire trucks. So they tend to sit in the fleets, the 2FM, which is fleets and management.
Fleet and facility.
They tend to sit there longer, which again, they should also be prioritized as emergency vehicles as well, and hopefully we can get them to be serviced sooner so we can get them out. We should be able to have 10 vans. There should be able to be, we're working towards 4 vans on the north side, 4 vans on the south side, and 2 vans that are doing the follow-up care with folks. So that's the goal. And the other really great news is hiring is going really, really well. They're hiring for 2 shifts. So we'll be working to expand the hours, which would be a great progress. But they are like 75% of the hires they have made, which is fantastic. I was going to say one other thing about that. Oh, and they're getting a ton of applications. So like one of the concerns that people have said when we were dreaming about what mental health crisis response could look like is, and no one wants to do this. And actually, we're finding that lots and lots of people want to do it, and they're getting lots of qualified people, and they're just hiring in shifts. So, and also I think city hiring is difficult for anyone who's ever been employed by the city. They know, it takes a long time. And so I think that's kind of where a couple of the follow-ups have been. But we're making good progress on that. Questions? Mm-hmm.
Do you know why the care team is not allowed to access the police radio system? It seems like they had some really good numbers from the self-dispatch. Like, I'm curious what was the reason that was revoked?
I'm not 100% sure. I think there are some regulations around like just what non-officers were allowed to have access to. That's what I've heard, but I don't know why it was allowed before. And I know that other cities across the country are doing that, and it's successful for them. So I don't know what the difference is. Like I said, they call it CAD. Again, what does CAD stand for? Computer aided dispatch, which is the system that they use. And I'm under the impression that they're revamping they're getting a new CAD system. And under that CAD system, there should be ways to turn off certain things that a care worker doesn't really need to know. And that would be, in potential violation of some, HIPAA or,
It's like sensitive,
sensitive information.
it's related to the parking alternative response initiative that we've been talking about. One of the logistical hurdles that we've had to deal with is that sensitive information, officer safety risks being broadcast over a radio that are not sworn police. So that's one of the hesitations that we've heard about. It's also the sensitive information that Jenny's talking about. So like, where people live, if that's not being only for officer ears, that it does present a safety risk for residents as well. And there's other things, one of the things that we wanted to mention, or you can correct me if I'm wrong, but back when in those 2025 numbers, that's when CARE was within CPD or not CPD? No, that was. Then my point is moot.
I was wrong. I don't know. It's not HIPAA. It's what do they call it? It's another acronym. What's it called when you CGIS? Is that there's like a CGIS certification that I think officers need to get. Officers have, but like civilians don't all have. But I think civilians actually could also get CGIS certification.
Just one other thing on the public reporting on the CARE program and their ability to self-dispatch. The Chicago Tribune had a very large story in June about the CARE program and essentially how it's been failing and flailing for about a year, particularly under the former leadership of the City Department of Health, but also because they lost the ability to self-dispatch. Following that article, the Tribune published a story on June 30th, where the mayor said that he's working to get CPD terminals back to the city's mental health crisis team so they can self-dispatch. I haven't seen any updates on that since then, but that's been the mayor's statement as of a couple months ago.
Yeah. Okay. Next, just a quick. Oh.
Back on your previous slide, you just had a reference to establishing a general order. And maybe this is more for Lieutenant, does it come just from the superintendent? Is it something that can be defined and established quickly and has to be followed? I'm not sure. I just want a little context on what a general order is and how it gets implemented.
That's a great question, and I can do my best, and feel free to. From my understanding, general orders, so there's different types of orders within the police department. General orders are ones that really kind of guide department-wide expectations and how the department will operate and act around certain type things like use of force, has things like community policing, just what department behavior will look like for around certain things. So the question was, does CCPSA have authority to author general orders? Yes, and so one of the things that district councils have the ability to do is put forward priority proposals to the commission. And so one of the priority proposals that I have put forward is around creating this general order so that it's institutionalized in CPD and it's really part of how CPD operates, and they understand exactly what that relationship looks like, what is protocol when they're on the field, when they're in the field, and what communication looks like. And so I am under the impression that they are working on that general order currently, and we're just trying to keep pushing it along to make sure that that's happened. And then yes, the great thing about general order is before it gets implemented or it goes into effect, first of all, we all have the ability to comment on it and give our opinions. But the commission also has an ability to do that as well.
And just to continue that, so the CCPSA ordinance has a whole policymaking section in it that describes how the CCPSA can initiate the writing of a general order. The ordinance also recognizes that most general orders having to do with CPD's day-to-day operation are still going to come from CPD. And so CPD does create those orders in-house, and they can be reviewed by the CCPSA. The CCPSA can reject general orders or can amend them. And the CCPSA, if they do enact general orders, they can be overridden by a vote of the city council, but there's a whole process that involves a back and forth between the CCPSA and CPD to make sure that a final policy is fully ironed out. And this is a policy-making authority that the commission has, and we have input as district councils into what the commission can do on that score.
And maybe I'm getting too much into semantics here, but is the general order guidelines that are kind of recommended but don't have to be followed, or are they mandatory that they need to be followed? I'm just trying to understand the weight that they carry, I guess.
My understanding, and Lieutenant Losey, correct me if I'm wrong, is that they have to be followed by members of the department, that they are policies of the department, and that a condition of your employment in the department is following the policies of the department. Do I have that wrong?
That's correct. No,
that's correct. Okay.
It is a written order that we're all supposed to follow, that we have to follow.
For the record, it's a written order, he said, that they have to follow.
Oh,
yeah. Oh, you have one? Oh, amazing.
Oh, great.
Okay. That was a great discussion. Thank you for the questions and thanks for engaging on that. I'm going to make this one real brief. The workforce allocation study is also something that we talk about quite a bit, and that's very important because it's a way to make sure we're utilizing the police resources we have most efficiently and effectively. One of the things, I'm just going to talk about that middle point just to keep us moving, and you can read the rest on your own. An important update from CPD is that they're currently reviewing all the recommendations that came in through the workforce allocation study and are understanding, and they're kind of understanding if they're feasible, what kind of workforce implications they have, what kind of labor implications they may have, what kind of technology, data, and they're thinking about all. So they're currently just kind of taking it in and trying to understand what are the practicalities of moving forward with the recommendations. And then importantly, they're tracking them by giving them different type of statuses, saying this is something we can start implementing right away. This is a near-term priority. This is a longer-term priority that we're going to put on hold. Then they're also giving examples of, or giving a categorization of this is not something we agree with. And then they have said that they will give it reasons for their questioning of the recommendation. But that's an important update of the workforce allocation study. We hope to keep, I think that tracking information is really important for a community to keep being able to understand where they are and what work is being done and where they're in agreement and where they're in when they have conflicting opinions with the report. And so being able to share that transparently, I think, is really important and something that we'll keep trying to work on to bring to you. And then the last part of the workforce allocation study that was also really, really important is they have a community policing report that went alongside that. The update on that is they are currently working on another general order called GO203, I believe, and it's all about their community policing, kind of the overview of what community policing will look like, the mission and the values. The whole idea of this new community policing report was Chicago has gotten away from this mentality that all officers are community policing officers. We have caps, and they kind of have, that's kind of siloed community policing where they kind of take on community meetings and all community interaction, and other officers don't have that ability, or that they don't always see that as part of their job. So trying to reintegrate both of those and make sure that all officers are community policing officers. So they're going to revise this new order so that they're going to revise this old order so that is integrated into their general orders and part of what kind of the backbones of the police department. They're also working on an in-service training for 2027 so that they can teach all their officers and reinforce these ideas around community policing. Some important near-term work that they're going to be addressing, they're going to be developing some district-specific onboarding, so officers who come new to a district can maybe learn about community resources in the district right away, and have other ways of making sure that they're part of the community immediately. The reassessing the structure of how the Office of Community Policing actually operates and what their role is. There was a lot of recommendations around that within the report. They're reprioritizing geographic integrity, so making sure that the officers get to patrol the same area is really important for understanding, knowing your neighborhood and knowing your community. And then they're also looking to strengthen community building opportunities like beat meetings and community conversations. I know one of the many things that is important to us is we want beat meetings to be impactful and to be important for really a way for a community to bring problems like what was addressed, what you were talking about on your corner, and allow that for conversation and problem solving with the police department. Is it something the police can work on their own? Do they need to bring in other agencies? Really maybe not even other agencies, but maybe it's also a community group in the neighborhood. Like, who can come together to solve problems that we're facing in the community? Is a vision that I have for beat meetings.
Okay, we'll go over this quickly, but the community partnership plan is a monthly update that we give. The community partnership plan is something that we developed about 3 years ago. We would hear from residents, understanding their main priorities and seeing how we can work with some of our government partners to make changes in our neighborhood, something hyper local. We have been trying to keep track of this on a monthly basis over the last 3 years, and we wanted to just report a brief update. We are 93% complete, ongoing, or in progress, and we have one topic specifically that we're going to be talking about next month, because our next month's meeting topic is going to be around conversations around underserved youth, so that we can bring them into our meeting next month and learn a little bit more about that.
Sure, sorry. So I'm actually really excited, and I want to get a great attendance for that meeting. We're having an author from University of Chicago named Jens Ludwig come to speak about his book that he recently published about kind of what drives gun violence in Chicago. And I think it'll be a really, really great opportunity to hear from him. He has some really interesting ideas that I'm excited to be able to share with the community. And to that point, we're also trying to invite an organization called Becoming a Man, BAM. And they do a lot of just like taking a breath before acting. And kind of as a teaser, a lot of what Jens talks about in his book is this idea that if we had a minute to stop and think before we acted, a lot of the gun violence that happens in Chicago could be averted. And so BAM does a lot of that kind of programming, and I think it's interesting, and I hope you all join us for that.
All right, we'll move on to the main topic for tonight's conversation, which is the search for the next superintendent of the Chicago Police Department. So first of all, what does the superintendent do? I'm sure Lieutenant Losi knows this very well. The superintendent is the head of the Chicago Police Department, is the chief of police, is the same title in other cities. So the superintendent leads and manages CPD, sets priorities for the department, controls how officers are deployed and how resources are deployed, contributes to accountability within the police department and compliance with the law and compliance with CPD's own policies, and represents CPD publicly. And on this slide, you'll see a photo of Larry Snelling, who for the last 3 years served as CPD's superintendent. I think many people would say there's some really big shoes to fill with his deciding to retire about a month ago. So he decided to retire, and there's now a process to select the next CPD superintendent. That process, this is a very wordy slide. I'm not going to read it at all. The CCPSA, the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability, in which any of you who've been to these meetings before knows that I talk a lot about that body. It's a body of 7 community members, and under Chicago ordinance that was passed in 2021, this 7-member commission is responsible for taking in applications for CPD superintendent and ultimately nominating 3 candidates to the mayor to serve as CPD's next leader. It's arguably the CCPSA's most important responsibility, and it's certainly its highest profile responsibility. And Larry Snelling, who I mentioned earlier, was a product of that process when it was run for the very first time under the interim community commission in 2023. Might have been 2022, probably both. Under the ordinance, the CCPSA has 120 days to conduct its search. It has to be a nationwide search, and the commission last week hired a search firm to do a nationwide search for the next superintendent. They also, under city ordinance, have to conduct 4 listening sessions in different parts of Chicago, at least one on the south, west, and north side each, so that community members can give input as to what they want to see in CPD's leader. They also canvass members of the department. Last time they spoke to the unions that represent each of the levels of CPD, the FOP, and the unions that represent the management staff and supervisory staff of CPD. They talk to subject matter experts both in Chicago and nationwide. And then they ultimately select, after conducting interviews and taking in all that feedback, they select 3 nominees that they send to the mayor. And the mayor then can select from only those candidates that the CCPSA sends. Now, if the mayor decides to reject all those candidates, the decision gets thrown back to the CCPSA to send new candidates. So the mayor, this was a pretty big sea change in how Chicago selects its police leader. It used to be very mayorally driven, and this process tries to make it more community driven. And I was really impressed with how the CCPSA ran this process 3 years ago, and they're starting that process now. Just to look at the actual timeline for this process, it began on November 16th when Larry Snelling's resignation became official, and that's started the 120-day clock that the Community Commission has. They're engaging in community engagement now through September 30th. They've posted the application for the superintendent online. The application will close the week of September 14th. The commission will interview candidates in October, and on November 12th, the commission must vote on the candidates and send names to the mayor for his consideration. And then after that, the commission and the mayor will be doing city council outreach on whatever the choice ends up being. Once the mayor makes a selection, the selection must be confirmed by the city council. So the Committee on Police and Fire, once the mayor makes an appointment from the nominees that he receives, that nominee then has to be confirmed through a vote of the City Council Committee on Police and Fire, and then by a vote of the full City Council. Yeah, great. Any questions on that process? All right. So community engagement is a huge part of this. Again, this is way different from how Chicago selected its CPD superintendent in years past. And the commission has to hold these 4 listening sessions. And in addition, the district councils, first of all, last time they ran this process, the district councils barely existed or didn't quite exist yet. So there was no opportunity for the district councils to play any sort of meaningful role in the CPD superintendent selection process. But this time, we get to have meetings like this, where any of you are welcome to share feedback that we will take down and be sure to get shared with the commission as they make their decision. And they're also doing engagement with all sorts of other organizations and groups throughout the city, faith leaders, community violence interrupters, violence prevention, police accountability organizations, law enforcement groups, affinity groups, immigration rights groups, youth, business organizations, etc. I did want to highlight, if we could go to the next slide, please. I mentioned these listening sessions that the CCPSA is running. There is one that's happening on the north side, and it's actually in our district, and I want to make sure you all know about that. It's going to be September 2nd, so next week, 6:30 p.m. at DePaul College Prep. There will be members of the commission there, and you can provide any comments you want directly to commission members for what you'd like to see in the next CCPSA superintendent. The commission is also holding a virtual only listening session on September 10th. And that'll be, believe via Zoom, and you can give comments there as well. And there's more information at the CCPSA's website, ccpsa.chicago.gov. The full URL is here, but it's a big banner on their website if you just go there or look for it there. But we are going to take feedback here tonight. And that feedback is important because this really is designed to be a community-driven process. That feedback goes into creating the interview questions that commissioners will ask of candidates, the scoring rubrics that the commissioners will use to evaluate each of those candidates, and then ultimately inform the commission's final decision as to who to nominate to the mayor.
So Jenny and I were able to be out at my neighborhood's farmers market. What was that, a couple weeks ago? And that was here in the 46th Ward over on Sunnyside Mall. And we had a table there, and we were engaging with community members and asking them about their thoughts on who they would like to see as the superintendent. And they were saying that they would want someone that protects immigrant communities and those under attack by unlawful ICE activity, someone that prioritizes procedural justice, builds meaningful relationships with communities, a creative problem solver, understands the importance of alternative response, prioritizes consent decree compliance, and then holds officers accountability while supporting good officers. We wanted to bring this to the forefront and put this in front of you just because, as Sam mentioned, we have an opportunity to provide feedback to the CCPSA so that they can relay this back through the superintendent search, formally through the commission and the commissioners. So one of the things that we wanted to do tonight is present to you a few different questions, and we'll do these one at a time. And Nat and Jenny have the microphone, but we wanted to understand what your priorities look like, what you would like us to take back to the commission. And we'll start with the first question. First question is, what qualities, characteristics, skills, and or experiences would you like to see in Chicago's next police superintendent?
We'll take the mic over.
So I guess the thing I think, and looking at the resolution you proposed, is I would like to know more about what actual experience the candidate has with working with community groups, especially with community groups that may not always be friendly, because that's going to be a key on how this works. And I think that needs to be, put out there. It's not just willingness, but what experiences does the person have?
It's a great one. So it's what experiences does this person, the candidate, have with working with community and really exhibiting that community policing efforts that Jenny was talking about. Just a show of hands, anybody else agree with that or have a different sentiment? First show of hands if you agree with that sentiment. All right, so that is pretty unanimous for the record, Nat, that everyone here in attendance agrees with that sentiment. Anybody else have any qualities that they would like to see for the superintendent?
Thanks, Jenny. I like this. If you go back to the previous slide there, I just want to kind of expand on a couple of things there. The first one, I'm glad to see alternative response was on the slide, but I think it needs to be a lot more that understands. It has to be a leader who's actually deployed it in the community that they're coming from. And I think that needs to be not only things like care, where it's again focused on mental health, people in crisis. It needs to be focused on how do you take things sworn officers don't really need to do. Again, I think our parking initiative is in that. And the one that I would add would be alternative response around young people. I think a significant number of our issues here, the whole, all this about, teens getting together or somehow a big issue. So let's send more police with guns. I think this is another area where alternative response and even a more prospective effort around that would be really, really important. The one thing I would add under accountability is they need to have budgetary accountability. So, again, the reporting from, 6 weeks ago was the CPD blew 125 million past their budget. So I want to see somebody who can actually operate within the budget that they are given by the city and make smart decisions on spending that in alignment.
All right, I'm going to break that down for another show of hands, and I'll break it down in 3 and please let me know if I get this wrong, but first is actual experience implementing alternative response. Who would like to show their agreement with that sentiment? All right, unanimous again. The second one is experience and ideas around alternative response by engaging youth more strategically, I would say. And unanimous. And then the third is budget accountability, specifically with CPD's budgetary accountability. Are you thinking about things more like overtime, misconduct lawsuits? Is there anything else that you would like to detail around that?
I think that's a good example that exists within that, but more broadly, you know, how can you let yourself go 125 million past your budget? I'm shocked.
Okay. Yeah, more budget accountability from a headquarters perspective. Anybody in agreement with that? All right, full agreement here.
I didn't see every hand.
Great. Anybody else for qualities they would like to see in the next superintendent? We have one over here.
Some people might be offended by what I'm going to say, but I think you need a person of color, because we have to look at what is the dynamics of the city. Okay. A certain percentage is white, certain percentage people of color, certain percentage of people of my color. Okay. We all one race. That's no argument. But we need somebody that can understand the majority of the citizens that it affects. Okay.
Yep.
And I know this from personally. I have a lot of negative effects dealing with police, especially police that are not like me. That's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you. No, and any show of hands there in support, and let me summarize this a little bit succinctly. A person of color and someone that represents the community that the police are going to be policing and engaging with. So you want someone that is representative of all communities. All right. Any show of hands there in support of that? No. We have most in agreement. One question? Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with that. I also have a question about if there are dealing with children and dealing with the youth. If we, I guess alternative response is great, but if there's no, I guess maybe this falls under procedural justice, but if there's no enacting, not enforcement, but the correct word, enacting the law, enacting, arrests and everything. I don't know how that's going to benefit the entire community as a whole. By community, I mean the city of Chicago. If we're just constantly doing alternative responses, which is great, I support CARE Act, support everything that will care. I just think that there has to be someone who actually does not by the book, but someone who is not, going to be, swayed down from enacting justice, and justice as in rules and regulations.
And this is a question back for you. So are you thinking more like proactive measures, like there, things like creating third spaces, more engagement opportunities for youth? So you're not just reactive to that and providing resources. Is that something that you were thinking about along those lines? Or
yes.
Okay.
Of course, and also too, when an issue does come up, example, at a teen takeover or something, there is a guns involved. There's not going to be no, we need to call it. Yeah, if there's an actual crime happening, that deserves swift justice, we not are just prioritizing the alternative responses. Someone has to balance between, okay, we should have alternative responses, but in this moment, I'm not going to be swayed down by what people are political bargain from doing my job. So someone that stands strong and doing that.
And I think, that's a combination of proactive resource management, also having ideas other than punitive measures, and making sure that they have a holistic way to approach youth, not just what we have today. It just feels like, and this is, I'm speaking personally, it feels like we only have consequences, and those consequences usually are really extreme, and then there's a big gap whether or not someone can be held accountable. So it gets into a really big spiral. But do you want to? I want to make sure that we're also capturing your thoughts.
What I'm hearing is there is a law enforcement responsibility that police have, especially when there are guns or if there is a threat of violence or actual violence, and police do have that job to do when it's necessary. Am I hearing that right?
All right. Show of hands in support and agreement with that sentiment. We got about half the room now. All right. I'm going to look at time. So I'm going to move on to the next question. But again, if you have any other thoughts, feel free to add on. And let me get back to our slides with questions. 1 second. Okay. The second is what worked and what didn't work well under the former superintendent. Yeah, I've been in front.
Hold on.
1 second.
The consent decree, I mean, that's still out there, and I think that's still pretty important.
All right, for context, and I don't have the latest numbers, but when I would imagine when Superintendent Snelling came into office, that was right around the time that we started in office. And I know the consent decree was about 6% compliance. I think the latest numbers that we are up to about 25% compliance. I know it's in the 20s. Just to give a relative nature to Ivan's comment, but I would say someone that is going to be dedicated to executing the consent decree in full compliance quickly.
And are you saying you think this, like, we made a lot of, from my view, we made a lot of progress on the consent decree under Superintendent Search. Do you agree or disagree? And do you think there was something he did or didn't do too?
I really can't answer that, but I can say that it's the law, it's the consent decree, it's not completed. He was the responsible party.
So maybe that's more to like the first one, and I think we can kind of
meld it.
But consent decree compliance is important for sure. Oh, did you want to? Yeah,
show of hands of just someone. We want someone who is going to ensure the compliance of the consent decree is in full compliance quickly. I emphasize quickly at the end, but show of hands. Thank you. Full agreement.
You know, one of the things you highlighted several meetings ago was the traffic stop, and while the stop and frisk went away, the traffic stop went through the roof. And then there was interesting article, I think it was in either Axios or one of the other newspapers recently, saying, again, it would seem like half of the actual traffic stops are not being reported according to Illinois law. Again, Amy Thompson highlighted that. I'm very concerned about the lack of enforcement around ICE's violation of the law. Again, this week we saw the first sign that something in CPD, there's going to be some kind of investigation of stuff that happened almost a year ago. And I think in general, the willingness to speak publicly about things that may not have gone right. Again, I would go back to April 25th when the 2 officers nearby were shot. Something went seriously wrong that day, and we've not heard anything about that. What was the training? Was the procedure? What was the protocol? The fact that someone who was in custody was being taken to a healthcare facility, managed somehow to produce a gun and shoot 2 police officers. That had to have been a serious breakdown in procedure of some way or training. We've not heard a word since several days after that about what's happening.
All right, I'm gonna break that down into 3, and apologies if I need to get this right. So proper handling of procedures when folks are in custody, because that led to 2 officers being shot. You want folks to handle procedural awareness and handling more effectively. Be forthcoming with the community. Okay. Anybody? I'm gonna now show of hands and support. Yep. I was gonna say not support, but I don't want to single anybody out. Okay, and then the other one is and so our meeting was about pretextual traffic stops. So I just want to make sure that I get the wording Correct. So want someone that's going to handle and address pretextual traffic stops more directly and better.
Yeah, that's better. Only
Okay. Anybody all supportive of that? All right. And then you have to remind me of your third. Wait, don't. No, remind me of your third one. Yes, thank you. Yeah, investigating misconduct or related to ICE raids, and all in support of that. Great, great. All righty. We have one more.
I would just say, from my personal experience, I've had some transparency issues under the current or the former superintendent. I don't know if this falls under CPD exactly, but I had tried to get a lot of information about the contract between the FOP and the city, and really struggled from all parties, and I kept getting sent in a million directions. And so just clear answers about what the most up-to-date policies and kind of contract is, but transparency more broadly.
Yeah, and Sam, this is a question. Do you know if how the FOP and the CPD headquarters interact? Because those are technically two different bodies. So, isn't it? I'll have to get in. Like,
I understand that, like, it might not be directly CPD, but I think just broader transparency about what the kind of policies are in terms of like police misconduct processes and things like that.
Yeah, so better transparency around misconduct, general orders, policy within the department. All in favor? All right. We got most again.
Can I add one?
You got the mic.
Just one that I wanted to, for myself, wanted to add for what worked and what didn't work under the former superintendent. Something that I really appreciated about Larry Snelling was the trust he seemed to have among those he led. So he came up through the department himself, seemed to have had the back of those who worked for him. I don't, sometimes there's a tension between accountability and having the back of people you lead, and holding that tension I think is going to be really important for the next superintendent, because both are important. And nothing is more demoralizing, I know this from experience, than working for a boss who doesn't have your back. So that is something that I think is going to be important, and something that from a public facing standpoint that I really appreciated of his, I think really was on display during the Democratic National Convention in 2024. Larry Snelling was out front in public among his officers, leading a lot of the public show of defense for the convention. I thought that was a good look for our city, and I hope that gave some morale to the officers he was commanding, who had a huge task on their hands, protecting this worldwide, this event with worldwide eyes on it. So those are just a couple of qualities that I really appreciated in his time in the department that I would like to see continue.
So to follow suit, to summarize, I'm going to do two topics. A superintendent that can control the locker room and really be a leader for those who report to him. All in favor? And then one that is willing to be out on the front lines and be visible and be interacting and engaging with, the community and important events like Sam mentioned, the DNC. All right. I have a question for everybody, because I appreciated the comment about someone that understands alternative response, especially in other cities. How would you feel if the superintendent was not someone that was homegrown or someone that is spent a lot of time here in Chicago? Does anybody have concerns, or is that something that you're open to? Sorry, Jenny, I know this was the reason I ask is because this was a really big conversation topic when Larry Snelling was appointed or selected. So I just wanted to get a read on from the room.
I think it's an important question, but I don't think it should be the deciding question. But this is a complicated city, and the more someone has lived in the city, the more they know about it. But that shouldn't exclude other people. There's other cities and other experiences. But I do think it's something that needs to be, up there in consideration.
Okay.
It's nice if the could be no Chicago.
Yeah.
but that's not really important. It's being able to do the job and stand up for what is right. Because you can go all through this country and we basically are all the same wherever you go. Policing is policing if you do it right. Okay, so we need someone that can do it right and stand up for what if somebody in his rank or somebody close to him or her and they dirty and they're not doing right, he needs to step up and get rid of them. That's what leadership does. Okay, leadership does what needs to be done, and if it steps on the toes of somebody, oh well, we want the job done right.
All right.
And that affects everyone. So he or she doesn't have to be Chicago, because most humans, they are all the same.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree that I don't think I think it's a consideration, but I don't think it should disqualify anything. And I think anyone, and I think maybe pro to having someone that isn't from the city is they can, if someone has a lot of experience with alternative responses in other city where it's been implemented well, maybe they can bring those practices to our city. So that might be an actual benefit. But yeah, awesome.
I'm going to agree with my two neighbors here. I think we're kind of at that point where someone coming from the outside has this experience, and the character, I think, is what we need. I think that the challenge is Chicago has struggled for years. The fact that we're about 7 years into a consent decree, the fact we're probably the only city in the United States that has memorial to police torture, I think we need a fresher start. So I would actually say, I think not being from Chicago is an important, provided they have got the character and they can do the things. I think that's what we need.
Okay. Thank you so much for the engagement, the ideas. I think we've covered these three questions pretty well, and we will be taking those back to the commission.
Did we cover public safety and police issues?
All right. Yeah. Well, just what public safety and policing issues should the next superintendent prioritize? I think we covered a lot of them, but is there anything that you feel is missing from what we've talked about tonight? We got one in the back. Here.
My knees are old. The one thing I would add from a general policy is I think the over policing in neighborhoods like you're talking about they're not like Lakeview that's completely white. I think that's an important skill, and it's a policy in one of the unfortunately most racist cities in the United States. That has to be a skill that this person brings in, and it needs to be at the top of their policy list because it impacts so many things farther down.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on and give Jenny a couple minutes to get back up here.
Yeah, not that slow. Okay. Let me switch to this microphone. We again really appreciate that conversation. I think it was interesting to hear everyone's perspectives, and yeah, appreciate you guys taking that time to engage with us on that. We wanted to share one perspective of ours that's really important to us for superintendent. We agree with a lot of these things that were said tonight, and there's a lot of things that need to be prioritized and thought about. But you may not be surprised, for those of you who have come to many of our district council meetings, that one of our top priorities is making sure that the next superintendent really understands alternative response, understands why it's needed, and really gets behind the work that's needed to be done in Chicago in order to create this really brand new system that we haven't had before, yet we see being successful across the country and many other municipalities. So we really believe that Chicago deserves a superintendent who's committed to building a public safety system that sends the right responder to each call, and that works to better serve residents while allowing officers to focus on the responsibilities for which they're best trained. Officers are so busy doing so many things. We need officers to focus on the crime pieces of things and the relationship building that happens in the community. And we need to be building an expanded emergency response for all the other things that don't require police response. So that is really important to me, and I think I speak for all of us when we say that. So we can go to the next slide. And we have spoken at many meetings about alternate response and the importance of alternate response, and I have a couple slides in here about it, but I'm going to table those, and if anyone ever wants to talk to me about alternate response, I'm always happy to take that meeting. But one of the important things that the ordinance creates for district councils to do is we have the ability to make recommendations to the commission for them to consider when they're doing important things such as this. And so what we have decided is we've created this process for passing resolutions. Me, along with the district council alternative response working group, work to create, and Sam and Emilio as well, worked to create this resolution that we are going to put forward tonight. And we'll also ask you as many district council, we've asked all of district councils across the city to consider it and to bring it up in their meetings. And the goal really is to make sure that all the work and all the community support for alternative response is reflected in the superintendent search, and then really to make sure that we hire a superintendent who is committed to expanding alternative response. We have the next slide kind of goes over, is in the resolution, but does everyone have a copy of the resolution in front of them? I just want to take a minute and actually just encourage you guys to just read through it before we take a vote. And if anyone has any questions or thoughts, I would love to hear them.
We've got copies coming around.
If you need a copy, yeah, you can raise your hand.
So, as a clarifier, a resolution is really just a formal written statement that the three of us intend to vote on as a statement of our district council. Does it have any binding authority on anyone? No, it does not. But it is a statement that we have each looked over, added to. We also shared the text of this resolution with the community earlier in our newsletter and opened it up for comments. And we're hoping that we can sort of formalize our thoughts on what the commission should focus on in hiring the next superintendent. And you'll notice there's a lot of the formal form of a resolution is a lot of clauses that begin with whereas, which is sort of the background to the resolution. It's all of the sort of thought and fact gathering and ideas that went into what we're actually asking for. And then on the second page, it says, therefore be it resolved that we, the members of the 19th District Council, call for the commission to include the following as part of its interview process for all superintendent candidates. And that question is, what responsibilities currently assigned to police officers do you believe could be better handled by other professionals? And what will you do as superintendent to build and strengthen those alternatives? So we are formally asking the commission to ask that question of superintendent candidates. In addition, we are asking, as members of the 19th District Council, we are urging the commission to ensure that every finalist nominated for superintendent demonstrate a clear understanding of the role of alternative response within a modern public safety system and a commitment to supporting the continued development of alternative response as part of a public safety system that better serves Chicago residents while allowing police officers to focus on the responsibilities for which they are best trained. So that is our request as a district council to the commission, that they make this a priority in their search for superintendent.
So yeah, take a minute to read over those whereases clauses so that you can think about. So, you know, if you have any questions or thoughts, we'd be open to them, and then we can take a vote.
I have one other thing. Not to talk over those who are reading, but just from my own perspective on this issue, in studying alternative responses and like the growth of this more this larger umbrella of public safety response in other cities and also in Chicago. What I have really noticed is that the buy-in of police departments is really important to making sure it can be successful. That police departments have a really important job to do. If they are trained in law enforcement, we do have crime, we do have violations of the law, and police officers are there to try to prevent those issues and address them when they occur. But something that we've also seen is that police officers, especially in Chicago, are called really to do everything under the sun. It's one of the only agencies that works 24/7, and so basically every problem gets dumped onto them. And we've actually seen our commander Jasani here in the 19th district from this stage, because it was at this location at Uptown Church, where we asked his opinions on whether mental health crisis alternative response is important. And he stood up here and said, you know, police will respond to anything that we're called to do, but police aren't the ones who should be responding to mental health crises. And that's sort of a foundational tenet that we ran for office on. And we think that there are different solutions to different problems, and we want to also empower officers to point residents to those different solutions that might create a better outcome and allow officers to do what they've been best trained to do. So just from my own perspective, having that kind of buy-in from the police department and coordination and partnership is something really important to making our public safety system one that can work for everyone.
That's my soapbox.
Okay. Yeah, we have one. Sure.
Clear understanding of, and I would experience really was not just an understanding, there's experience. That's second one.
Demonstrate a clear understanding and experience with. Okay.
My only issue with that, and I don't mean to quibble, but because this is so new, it's unclear that there are many candidates who will have experience with it. It's really, what I'm looking for in this is really an understanding of it and openness to coordinating with it, because it doesn't exist in most places in the country still. It's popping up in lots of places. But I do think that if we limit the search to those who have experience with alternative response, that might not be true of someone who has an understanding and commitment to implementing it.
I agree.
You get an inside look at what our special meetings are like now. Okay,
but I want to point out that the question that we have asked, hold on. Nope, never mind. I thought I had a point and I don't have a point. But I have
and you know, one of the important things about this resolution too is the question that we'll ask. And the second part of that question is, what will you do as superintendent to help build and strengthen those alternatives? Which means that someone without experience could adopt, you know, instances of other, you know, maybe it's Seattle or Minneapolis parking alternative response, you know, making things up now. But I do like the fact that we word it in that way, so it opens up that candidate to bring their own ideas, whether or not they've had experience implementing them themselves.
It also opens up the possibility that they can bring in stuff.
Yeah, and just for the live stream, so Ivan just mentioned that it could also afford the opportunity to delegate to someone that does have that experience to help bring that into the city, which I agree with. Okay, so we're going to move to the vote, and I'm going to read this so I don't get this wrong. So what we're doing now is we're going to bring to a vote the resolution. So our next order of business is consideration of resolution DC 019-2026-001, which is titled Resolution Regarding the Selection of Chicago's Next Police Superintendent and the Future of Alternative Response. And as you mentioned, is a resolution so that we can ask the superintendent through the commission's search a very specific question and have their commitment and acknowledgement of the importance of alternative response as we've just discussed. Do we have a motion for the resolution?
Yes. I make a motion.
Okay, does someone wish to second the motion?
I second the motion.
Okay, Councilor Shaver has moved, and Councilor Schoenberg has seconded a motion to adopt resolution DC 019-2026-001. Is there any debate on the motion?
I already said my piece earlier, but I can talk more if you want. I'll spare you all that though.
All right, we will now move on resolution DC 019-2026-001. Those in favor of adoption, please say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. There are no nays. The ayes have it, and the resolution carries. All right, thank you.
Our first resolution.
Yeah.
Only took 3 years.
Yeah. All right.
What's so cool is that there are other district councils across the city who are also doing this to kind of strengthen the work that we're doing here around the park initiative and around the care team expansion. And so I think that this will be a loud shout to the commission, hearing from us that this is a priority. You know what? I think we recorded all your feedback, but we want you to know if you have more feedback, there is this QR code that you can scan to put more info if you want to spend some more time typing in there. I encourage you to do that. I also encourage you to share it with friends, with people in your neighborhood groups. And did I already say this, that we have sheets down there? Take that, bring them to people in your neighborhood.
All righty. The last part of our meeting is public comment, and we'll have 2 minutes. So if you please come over to the left of Sam, your right, and I'll start the timer, and I will start the timer after you state and spell your name. So the public comment that we have is Julian Cohen.
Hi, my name is Julian Cohen. That's JulianCohen. I just wanted to talk more about alternative response. I know we had a great meeting last month about the PARP initiative, which was super exciting. And since that time, I saw that Minneapolis is introducing, I think, a pilot for alternative response to traffic accidents. I think that could be an exciting new avenue for alternative response, because in my opinion, it also seems like not the most efficient use of time for officers to be being deployed for fender benders when in circumstances when no one is injured and there's no kind of dispute as to the accident. But I also am conscious of the fact that I don't want to kind of throw too many things in the works and distract from the exciting initiatives that are on the table. So that's all I have to say.
Awesome. Thank you, Julian. Yeah, are there any other public comments out there? We have one more. Okay. Yeah. Let me restart the timer for you.
All right. Thank you. I'm Chris Abbott from the 44th Ward Action folks. I'd actually like to go back to some of our previous meetings. So as an example, back in June, we asked about getting formal feedback from 19th District about what happened on April 25th with the access to Masonic Hospital completely blocked, with Wellington had dozens of police vehicles that were there. You could not get to the emergency room. We would still like to get an answer on that. Have you submitted that? Have they offered an answer?
No, we have not got an answer on that front. No, we have Commander Jasani has been out for quite some time, and now we have Captain Clark out on furlough. So that is something that is on the list to talk about when they're back.
Okay, so we would add to that list is in May we had submitted a petition asking for an opportunity to speak about post-Pride policing. We never got any kind of response from that. Post-Pride was a shit show, excuse my French. We have since requested an opportunity to meet with the folks involved with that, including the aldermen and the 19th district commander to find out kind of who made that decisions. Subsequent to that, the aldermen had a, quote, town hall meeting on public safety where we tried to get an answer to that. He completely blamed it on CPD. That whole thing was a CPD decision, despite the fact that he had been on the week before as a press release saying that he had did it. The other thing I'd add, we talked about a little bit, is adding to the definition of alternative response that we include dealing with young people. Again, I don't think we have a good track record in the city around how we deal with young people. We were there that day. 15-year-old girls are not scary. I don't know how to twerk, so I just felt embarrassed. But I had no fear whatsoever. So I think we need to do better around that. So that's it, Tom.
Thanks, Chris.
And if I could just respond to one piece to give an update on the Pride Parade post information. So we have heard that request before. One of the general orders that we were mentioning earlier is called GO 111. That is a general order that dictates the relationship between CPD and especially district commanders and district leadership and district councils. Under that general order, district councils have the ability to submit information requests to CPD. So the three of us submitted, I think it was just yesterday, or today, after some tweaking, a request to Commander Jasani for Pride planning documents for this year and the last 4 years, Pride planning documents, after action reports, any documents that show how they've responded in the past. So we're trying to gather some more information on how that planning has happened in recent years. As I mentioned before, I agree this is a pertinent issue to our district. It's the largest event that happens in our district every year, and it pulls the entire department into it. But so we are starting the process to gather that information.
We submitted a FOIA that was rejected.
Yeah, this is outside of FOIA, so I'm hoping we can get different answers.
And we meet weekly, and we have spoken about this idea at our weekly meetings, and we hope to FOIA this information, or not FOIA, get this information through GO 111 so that we can bring it to the community and have that conversation that you're talking about.
All right. Well, that is going to conclude our meeting, but we want to thank Pastor Jeremy and Uptown Church here. Thank you so much for hosting us. Time and time, Wednesday, September 30th, we're going to be at Lincoln Park Presbyterian Church. That's at 600 West Fullerton.
Put it in your calendar now. It's going to be a good one, I think.
And at 7:55, we will adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Let's go, sir.